Hello, welcome. My name is Tolly Bryn. This is the Joy of Awareness, and didn't really have a set subject for this video. I just kind of wanted to rant a bit, talk a bit about what I've been thinking about lately. I've been thinking a lot about the mind and how what I think or what we think affects reality around us and affects the way our lives progress. I'm currently reading the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. I read his Think and Grow Rich a few months ago, and I gotta say I was really impressed and I was really happy that I actually finally picked it up, because it's one of those books where, you know, I've heard about it so often in like self-help circles, and it just sounded really cliche and silly, to be honest, and I kind of decided that I didn't want to read it, and this is years ago, you know. But in the last few years I've kind of really built up a passion for figuring out my finances and figuring out, you know, how to actually make money without selling your time constantly. And when it comes to the mindset for breaking these old patterns of employment, I think Think and Grow Rich has really helped me, and I'm nowhere near where I want to be right now, but you know, it was really helpful for me to take a step upwards, so to speak, from where I used to be. So for some context, I, for the longest time, was a sort of dirty traveling scumbag hippie type guy. I would work as a ranger in the summers here in Iceland, and then I would travel during the winter, and I did this for some, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 years, with a few years in between, where I went and studied something at school, or like I studied classical drawing and art. Did a TEFL course for teaching English as a foreign language at some point in there. But I was always kind of like, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck, but I was definitely living year to year, if that makes sense. So I would work for an entire summer, like long shifts for weeks in a row, and get very well paid for that. And it was a nice, and is a nice job, and I still do them. Like I went last summer. I was working in a place called Lakagigar, which is the site of a major eruption that happened some 250 years ago. And you know, I was working like a dog, but I also got paid like a king. No, not like king, like a little bit better dog, I guess. But still, I was selling my time for money. And there's nothing, I think, inherently wrong with that, but it's really inefficient, you know, when you start thinking about it. But anyway, the book Think and Grow Rich I really started to implement many of the things that Napoleon Hill talked about in that book. I made up my own sort of formulas for success, like he talks about, and I would repeat them every morning and every night, and I still do, and I've been doing that for, I guess, maybe 6 months or something like that. And in that time, I have absolutely revamped my finances. Like I started really counting every penny. Not that that's always necessary, but it was necessary for me, because I'd started spending way more than I wanted to, and on things that I didn't need and didn't want, and I didn't really have a good grasp over where everything was going. And it was all like a state of mind, really. It wasn't like I've never had much trouble with money per se. Like I had enough to travel, and then I came back and worked some more, and I always worked for myself, and never like took any money from my parents or anything like that. But at the same time, like I wasn't thinking towards the future. Now, however, I've started really making sure that I know what money I've got coming in and what money I've got going out. So, for example, a few months ago, I bought an apartment. This apartment right here that I'm recording in. It's very small and very cozy. And I didn't move in yet because there were some tenants here, renters, and they had a 3-month period for which to get the hell out of here. No, I'm just kidding. I did really seriously consider letting them stay on because they really loved this apartment, but it was either them being homeless or me being homeless, so I had to unfortunately throw them out. But until then, they paid rent directly to me, so I made a bit of money from that. And obviously I've got a huge loan on this apartment, but I just kind of started to realize that money is really relative, and debt is really relative, and you can make a lot of money through debt. And I'm not necessarily advocating for, like, you know, just making lots of cash. It's more like I've been working on healing my relationship with money, because myself and many others, I guess, have been brought up believing that money is somehow evil and that more money will therefore make you a worse person. And I'm starting to realize that just can't be true, because there are poor people who are horrible people, and there are some really good, noble people who have a lot of money. And obviously the reverse is true as well. So that got me to thinking, like, so maybe money isn't the problem itself. Money is a tool, it is a medium, and it has various opportunities that it brings along with it. And, you know, having realized that, I started realizing that it's not money itself, but what you do with it. And I think it acts kind of as an amplifier on whatever you've got going on in your life. So me, for example, I try my very best to build up my character as much as I possibly can, and to strengthen all the values that I have in my life. Well, first you've got to obviously recognize your values, like figure out what are they, what is it that's important in life. And once you have those things down, that's when you can start living by them. And it's not that you're setting up like a cage of rules that you have to live within, although it, you know, in some sense it is that way. It's that I've started exploring the idea of an objective morality. And what I mean by that is I'm starting to believe, and I base this completely on my own direct experience. Well, that's a lie. I've gained a lot of ideas from various sources, but I'm starting to verify this with my direct experience. That when I say an objective morality, what I mean is that there are objective values in this world, and that there are consequences for not, or for going against these values, whether you recognize the values or not. So, for example, a person who, for some reason, whatever it is, grows up believing that murder is not a sin or not a crime, and goes out and kills a person, and he just goes about his life afterwards. what I've come to believe is that this person, whether he understands the nature of his crime or not, will reap the harvest of murder in any case. The same can be said for stealing, for instance. I have to admit that when I was younger, from maybe 12 or 13 all the way up to maybe 22 years old, I was a thief. Like, I was stealing a lot. I would steal, like, I had some scruples. Like, I wasn't stealing from like my grandma or from private individuals, really, although sometimes that did happen. But mostly like places where I was working, for instance, I would take money from the register or stuff like that. And you know, I kind of rationalized it to myself, and I was just like, yeah, this is okay because I'm poor and they have money and I need it, so I deserve it somehow. Like, I rationalized it so much that I thought I had, you know, made myself, how do you say, like, I made myself feel quite a bit better, definitely, by rationalizing this to myself. But I'm thinking of a specific year or specific summer that I was working, and I stole quite a bit of money from the register where I was working, and I'm not going to disclose where that was or what it was, but the winter that followed was definitely the worst winter of my life. Like, I had a lot of extra money, stolen money, that I was using to do all kinds of things, and it was just not worth it at all. And it feels a bit weird to acknowledge this because I haven't really told anybody about this. And it's strange to me that even though I managed to rationalize to myself that this was okay, that I deserved it, that this was, you know, some fat cats at the top were going to be keeping this money anyway, so I'd be better off just taking it and using it for myself. But morally speaking, it was definitely wrong. And since, like, from the premise that morality is objective and that values are objective, and that there are consequences whether you like it or not from breaking these values, I really suffered the consequences of that, even though I truly believed that I wasn't doing wrong. So I hope that makes sense. And I've started to expand this idea to other areas of my life, such as relationships, such as health, diet, and all kinds of other things. And you might be asking, like, how does objective morality cover diet, for instance? Well, bear in mind, I haven't got this all figured out. These are just some ideas that I'm working with now, but my general idea is that whatever harms life, whether it's you or anybody else, and that may or may not include animals as well. I'm not totally sure on that. Like, I eat meat and I eat animal products, and I feel better now than I've ever felt before, and way better than when I was vegan, for instance. So that, you know, little snippet of direct experience for me has kind of convinced me that it's more about human beings than about animals. Although, like, I'm not going to dismiss, like, the suffering of animals, like, absolutely not. I find it horrific, and I find factory farming absolutely horrific, and I try to avoid buying factory farmed foods if I possibly can. Try to buy organic and free roaming and all that. But for whoever says that a human being is equal to a chicken or a cow or a horse, they're just dead wrong. We human beings are the basis of value structures, and as such we are at the center of those value structures. And I think it can't be otherwise. I think that this is a sort of natural law. And when it comes to diet, if you're constantly eating processed foods, artificial sweeteners, sugar and like caffeine-laden energy drinks and all this stuff, if you're smoking and if you're constantly taking drugs or drinking way too much alcohol or whatever it is, you are actively harming your body and harming your life and ruining your life force, in a sense. And I believe that when we talk about sin, or when religious texts talk about sin, they are referring to breaking the objective value code of humanity. And obviously there is possibility for error in there. There is a high possibility and probability that in various religious texts you will have something listed as a sin that is not a sin, and whether that is conscious or unconscious is totally beyond me, but I do believe that is the essence of what sin is. When you ruin your own body, when you ruin your own life force, that is just as bad, if not worse, than, well, it probably is worse actually, than ruining somebody else's health or life. And I don't say that flippantly, because obviously ruining somebody else's health is an absolutely terrible thing, but I do think that in the context of morality, we need to put ourselves first, and this comes back to the idea of, putting the security mask or the oxygen mask on your child before putting it on yourself. Not to say that everybody else is a child compared to you. It's more that you being healthy and strong and following your own values are of infinitely more value to your fellow man than you are by being self-sacrificing, by throwing your life away and sacrificing it for somebody else. So that's the general idea I've been working with here. And I find it truly fascinating. Another context for this is relationships. So I've been in quite a few relationships since I was about 18. That's when I met my first girlfriend. And that was a toxic relationship, most definitely. And I totally own that I had a large part to play in that. We were pretty young. She was 15 and I was 18. So we were basically just kids still. And it was just emotional abuse from me and from her. And we just weren't a good fit for each other, but we kept on trying to make things work, and then I ended up leaving her. And I've been thinking back to all of these relationships that I've been in my life. And I've been realizing that I haven't been honest and I haven't been committed in the way that the women that I was meeting deserved. And I'm starting to realize that is absolutely morally despicable. I could excuse myself by saying like I didn't know any better, and that is true, I didn't know any better, but that doesn't really matter in the context of objective morality, because I reap what I sow whether I know what I'm doing or not. So that's why I believe it is so important to start really thinking about these things, realizing what these values are. And I'm not going to say like that I have it figured out and you need to follow these values. Absolutely not, because this is a highly personal thing, and I may have it wrong. It may sound like a contradiction that it's objective morality, but you need to find your personal take on it. But the reason that I am stressing that you need to take a subjective approach to this objective morality is that you cannot trust anybody when it comes to morality. People are moralizing right and left, and like, I don't need to tell you, like, in the state of the world as it is right now with all the vaccines and all this stuff, people are moralizing right or left. And as I'm doing these videos on YouTube, I will not be stating my my actual thoughts on this pandemic and the vaccine. But suffice to say, people are moralizing right and left. Everybody thinks they're right. An individual needs to purposely direct his attention or her attention to figuring out these values. And you would kind of put it forth as like, you need to figure out your values and what gives you meaning in life. But I would say that there are objective values, and most of us will stumble upon these values through direct experience at some point or another. However, living by a value because somebody else has imposed it upon you is destructive, and it will not serve you, because you are living for somebody else, and you must be living from your own heart, from your own health and life energy. That's how I approach this, and that's why I have become adamantly opposed to trusting experts, to respecting authority, simply because there is no such thing. There is only direct experience. And that's not to say that the experience of others should be dismissed. Absolutely not. And, I am, for the most part, quite scientifically minded, and I do understand that the scientific method is probably the best tool that you can possibly find for increasing your awareness and understanding of the world. That being said, however, science, as it's spoken of today, as a trademark, as a business, basically, or some kind of entity, it has become a religion, more or less. People trust the science, and they believe in science, and don't realize how absolutely idiotic that is, and how antithetical to the concept of science and the scientific method that actually is. Science is and has always been about direct experience, empirical evidence, and figuring shit out for yourself. It has never been about trusting, some well-paid men in white lab coats on TV telling you what you should or shouldn't do with your body and your health. That is absolutely a disgusting state of affairs, and that is unfortunately where we find ourselves today. Morality and health are very much intertwined. For the reasons that I was outlisting a few minutes ago, a healthy body is conducive to life energy. And if you intentionally do something to ruin your health, that is morally despicable, and that needs to be understood. And I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, oh, you're a bad person for doing this. I'm simply asking that you start to think differently about good and evil. Is evil, some kind of monster that's lurking behind the curtains and trying to direct you into doing bad things? Or is evil simply whatever ruins life or gets in the way of the thriving of the human individual? And I believe that's what it is. And when you put it in that context, good and evil become way more relatable, way more understandable. So if I'm stealing, like I was very often I would go to the store, and there would be some expensive items like honey, like vitamin supplements, or all kinds of stuff that I really wanted, but I didn't want to spend money on it. So I would put it in the bottom of my cart, and throw my jacket over it, then go through and pay my other items, and then when I was putting the stuff in the bag, I would take it from underneath the coat and put it in the bag and make my way out. And I did this tens of times, and probably saved, quote unquote, hundreds of euros by doing that. But I think we can all agree that stealing is not conducive to mental health, for instance, and to a healthy society, on the other hand. And it's hard to explain. Like, you really need to dive into this for yourself to really understand what I'm talking about here, because it's not that these are just arbitrary rules, like, oh, you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't kill, you shouldn't rape, whatever it is. It's that these things carry such heavy consequences and you would think that it's prohibited simply because it carries heavy consequences for the individual who gets stolen from, or who gets murdered, or who gets beaten up, or whatever it is. But I would say that it is just as much the consequences for the individual who is committing these sins. And once you start grasping this, everything changes. And once you start integralizing this into your life and finding out where you can apply this, in what areas you have not been applying this throughout your life, things start to change. Things start to get a whole lot better and a whole lot easier. Living a fully moral life is something that I'm striving for now. I'm still having troubles with a few things. Not stealing, not being dishonest. Thankfully, like, I have, for the most part, managed to work through and overcome those particular moral deficiencies. But there are other things, and especially like self-destructive behaviors, which do in fact have consequences for other people. So, for instance, pornography use. Let's take that as an example, because that is an example from my own life. Ever since I was a kid, I used porn, and I grew up with porn, like so many other people my age. It was ubiquitous in my childhood. All of my friends were doing it. Everybody at school was doing it. People were talking about it, but they still weren't really talking about it. They weren't talking about whether it was healthy or bad for you or whatever. But I still have a problem with staying away from it. Like, I really want to stay away from it. I really do. And I do believe it is sinful in the meaning of the word that I have been using up until now. Not that I'm saying, like, God will smite me for using porn, but it's not that far from the truth. It is ruinous to mental health and to physical health as well. And it also has incredibly ruinous effects for society and for the performers performers, you should say. Like, you don't even know whether the performers in porn are actually, whether it's actually consensual or not. Like, and that has been coming into the limelight with the whole Pornhub fiasco, and will probably for years to come be getting more and more exposure. And yet it's not widely spoken about, and you don't see it on the news, but nevertheless it is happening. And you may say that ignorance is bliss, but I am starting to heavily doubt that ignorance is actually bliss. Because from this model of reality, from this model of morality, ignorance cannot be bliss, because you will unwittingly be breaking objective moral law. And that will have dire consequences for you and those around you, whether you know about it or not. But I think I've ranted quite a bit now. I really, really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you will take the time to push the like button. I should really start saying push the like button like earlier in the videos, because I think there are a lot of people who are getting value from these videos. Like not loads of people. Obviously, I don't have many views right now, but still, I've been getting comments, and people seem to enjoy hearing me speak, so I want to do more of it. But I do want to try to reach more people, so if you can just take the time to like and share even, and subscribe to this channel, then I would be very thankful, and I think it will be very helpful in spreading this awareness, because that's what I'm about right now. That's the reason that I'm doing these videos, that I'm writing my posts on my website, and the reason I'm writing the books that I'm writing is that I want to do my part in spreading awareness of, I guess it's of moral law, of like universal health. I don't know exactly how to put it into words, but I do know that there is something that I'm trying to get across here. And the more I speak about it, the more I write about it, the clearer it becomes. And if you can help me spread this message, I'll be so grateful for you, to you. Otherwise, you can check out my website, which is joyofawareness.com. I've got quite a few posts on there, ranging from all kinds of topics, and I think you'll find something you'll enjoy there. Otherwise, you can check out my book, which is called Health Simplified. It's on Amazon right now. It's only $2.99. Or it's supposed to be. I think it's actually different between countries. Well, obviously it is between different currencies, but I mean, I said it at $2.99, but I think it's being sold for like $3.32. So $3.32 for whatever reason. I don't really understand the logic behind that, but anyway, it's cheap, and I have poured my heart and soul into it. I went into my own journey of overcoming really, really debilitating illness through fasting and a simple diet. And I hope to, in the future, tie all of my experience with improving my health into this idea of moral law, because I think it is very, very intertwined. So thank you for watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and stay healthy and stay aware. Bye.